today I'm going to be going over custom cityscape maps using the laser cutter. I've seen these on Etsy and other websites, and I just fell in love, and I needed to figure out how one is doing this. So I'm going to go in and dig right in. So you can see on my screen some of the different city maps that you can search. I've also created one using the Space Needle. I've made many of these, but I'm just doing this for pretty much the presentation. I've also added a heart right there to indicate a location, but it's super cool, super nice. And just to kind of break it out and show you the different layers that lay on top, to kind of make this whole experience maybe a little easier. So we have the major roads and highways, of course, with the text on the bottom and the icon right here. We have the mid layer, which is the cutout of the water, and then as well as the local roads, local roads, parks, things like that. And then the back layer is actually just a straight rectangle. I'm using blue stain, but you can use blue paint as well. And then when you put them all together, hopefully I can line this up correctly. You can see it makes one beautiful piece. If it's for a customer or anyone that I give it to, I also put a floating frame in there, kind of similar to what you see here in the image, inside of a frame, and it just looks gorgeous. So you can see there's a couple more, and I just fell in love and I wanted to figure it out. The first thing that you can see that it is a map, so you have to think where I would go to try to change and update and pull layers out of a map. And the first thing I thought of was Google APIs. I've worked in the field and used Google APIs here and there, and I knew that was a good starting point. I found that trying to program or make some code to spin an address and provide the layers necessary, while in the grand scheme of things might be faster, it's just initially was just taxing, and I just didn't want to do it. So I found a website called Snazzy Maps, where it is just a great program that I use to hold your styles, build the maps, and get it all squared away, and has a storage component in there holding your maps. So in case they want multiple maps, you can go ahead and do that. Like I've had a business for a farm that I've done 2 for, but then they ordered 5 more later on. That way I can just easily pull them and rerun them. It makes it a lot easier that way. So Snazzy Maps are not a paid sponsor. I just really like their product. You can create a style, explore styles, which is, other community members, or if you already create a style, in my styles. As you can tell, I have 3. One is for the major roads, one is for the water only, and one is for those local roads and parks. So those are the 3, and as you can tell, they're pretty much just black and white. The reason being is the laser, as you can have grays for like realistic photos and things like that. For most parts, when it just comes to filling and cutting, having the pure black and white makes it much easier. So I just separated those out. If you go to create style, like if you're going to build one yourself, and you go to like highway, you can change the colors to black, red, whatever it may be, and do that for pretty much anything here. When it comes to administrative, landscaping, points of interest. So if you want the text there or not there, if you want a different color, you can go in there and apply those as well and save them, and they'll go under my styles. Again, if you look up these names under my address, you'll probably be able to find it in the sort or the explore styles. So once you got that all taken care of, you're going to want to start building your maps. The first thing that they ask you is what style. I like to start with the water only. The reason being is that the water is probably the thing that makes it pop the most in the map. I've done different stains on top, some for the major roads to make it even pop further, but I think the water makes a nice feature. So I always want to kind of look on how I can position it perfectly for that water. The next thing you do is your size and location. I always do zoom level 13. That's just what I've done. I think it gives the best result for that point of interest, as well as giving the local roads the most detail. As you can tell, a lot of my customers, they buy this for a point of interest, either an anniversary, where they got married, where they got engaged, even businesses, or things like that, or their home, if it's not like a beach home or a cabin. Done plenty of those. So I put it to 13 to give that. I'm just going to do the Space Needle, which is the map that I've been showing off. And the next thing is the width and height. I just keep it as the default 100/600. The reason why is I'd like to have the ability to move or shift later on. That if I put it to the exact size that I need it, I want to have that kind of limit, or that ability to change it or move it, and I would have to do the whole process. This gives me just a little bit more leeway. All right, and then you can go in, apply those changes. My marker, I'm not going to apply until the top layer. As you can tell, you know, the icon is on the top layer. And then you can just go in and save it. I already have this saved in my maps. As you can tell, I've already done this. But you can go in and then just do Space Needle, and then I like to put _water, and then just press save, and it'll go under your maps. You can tell I've done quite a few of these, but as you can tell, I have the water, the major, and the local. So again, you would just do the same thing for the other two. My styles, local, apply. Again, the zoom to 13. As you can tell, it gets a little bit more detail. And then the Space Needle. And then, you know, just apply the changes. As you can tell, there's water there. Again, you can move this over if you wanted to into a specific location. If you wanted to highlight some water somewhere, or, you know, the city is more, you know, north or south, you can always do that. The only thing I would say is make sure that you keep the Latin log, copy that somewhere, and do that for the water, the same water and stuff like that, because if you do that on one layer and not the others, then they're going to be different, right? So make sure you do that. Again, I'm not going to add the marker, and then you just press save and then save the map. The last thing would be the major roads. And as you can tell, it looks pretty busy right there, but once you kind of zoom in a little bit, it kind of opens up and makes it perfect. So again, Space Needle, perfect, and then you just apply the changes, and this is where you would add your marker. The name, I would just mark it as Space Needle. Again, for that address, you can either use the Latin log, or you can actually use a location. And then you can use either the Google marker, some of their standard markers, or a custom marker. Since this is for an engagement, I'll just use the heart that I've downloaded. And then you can go change the size. I like 50/50 for mine. And then with this, you can actually move the heart around. Again, the heart is so large that it would encompass anything, even if you moved it a little bit here and there. So what I like to do is try to find, you know, a couple points of contact. So when I cut it out, it doesn't just fall through. If it does, it's not that big a deal. I just go in and, you know, glue it on later in that specific location. But if I can, I'll try to have it touch in multiple spots, so it's connected all the way through. And I would do something like this. This looks amazing. Apply changes, and then again, you just save and then put in your map name. All right, once you have all three of those done, you're gonna go to My Maps and find those maps. As you can tell, I have the three. I'm gonna just click on the water, and again, when you expand it, you're gonna get much more area to work with. You're gonna just screen print, so press screen print, and then I'm gonna open up Photoshop. And then this is where I kind of merge everything together and then get the frame in and everything like that. So once you screen print, it's gonna screen the size of your Photoshop. Once you press a new, it'll be to the size that screen print already. You can name it, but for this, I'm just gonna be pasting that in. Again, I have 3 screens, that's why it's screen printing so large. And then you would just go back and then just do it for the other 2. So that was water, let's just do major. I'm just going to wait for that escape to go away. Screen print, paste, and do it one more time for the local. Screen print, paste. So once I go back to Photoshop, you'll see that I have one layer for each. I have the local, major, and water. And now what I'm going to do is going to open up a new one. I'm going to go inches and going to do the size that I want. So this right here, I'm doing 11 by 14. There's two reasons why I do this size. One, the pieces of wood that I find, and I can talk about that later. Two, the laser cutter size, and then last but not least, the frame that I buy, the floating frame that I buy. So all three kind of makes it perfect, a perfect marriage on those three, because it all works. So again, the height is going to be 14, the width is going to be 11, and I'm going to press OK. And now I'm going to just build out the frame itself. So if you notice, there's a half inch, 2 inch, and ½ inch on top. So let's build that out. So let's go to rectangle. I have black. I'm just going to click and just do it this way. So 0.5 inches. Don't know what that was, but 0.5 inches. And then 14 on the height. Press OK. Make sure it's just black. Beautiful. And then just gonna drag this over. Perfect. So I duplicated that layer and just dragged it over. And then now I'm going to go back to the rectangle, click again, and I'm going to do the top bar. So the width is actually going to be 11 inches, and the other one is going to be ½ inch. It's okay. I'm just going to move it to the top. Beautiful. And then last but not least, it's going to be the 2 inch at the bottom. So the width is going to be 11 inches. 11 inches, and then the top is going to be 2 inches. Alright, and then let's move that to the bottom. As you can tell, it kind of looks like a Polaroid. I'm going to just remove this background layer, and then now what I'm going to do is just create a folder and call that the frame. I'll have the cat box on, and I'm just going to push all of them into the frame. Alright, and then you don't have to do this, but I like to do it. I just merge the shapes, and then I don't like it in the shape, so I'm just going to take the erase tool, click it, and it'll turn it into a layer. I don't think that matters all too much. I just like doing it. Alright, and then I'm just going to create one more, and that'll be the layers. And now we're going to come over here to what we took the screen print of, grab the rectangle select tool, and I'm going to just try to select everything from the one. I have the top layer selected, so it's going to be the local roads. Local. I'm going to go back. It's still selecting, the answer is still there, so I'm just going to click on layer 2, Control C, Control V. And then last but not least, Control C, and then Control V. And then I know this is the major, and this is the water. And I'm going to push the layers under the frame, so the frame is going to be above. Alright. And now what I like to do is I'd like to put the major on top of the water, and then select all. So the main thing is I'm able to see the major, and I'm able to move all the layers because it's all selected around. So if I see, you can see the heart, and if you look in these little corners, you can see all of them moving at once. And I think something like this would be perfect because I think the water is all in here and all in here. And after I like where the icon is, I then take the water and put it on top, and yeah, it's going to look great. And it's essentially, you know, what that location is on this. So if you can see that water and water, Beautiful. All right, now what we're gonna do is gonna be building, like, taking our layers and actually forming them for the laser cutter. So for the major, you probably don't have to do this, but I like to do it. I like to just select the black, make sure you have the major selected, and all roads are connected in some way. So as you can tell, just selecting the black will pretty much select everything. And then I go to select inverse, and then that way all the white is selected, and I'm just going to delete it. That way you can kind of see how it's all going to come together. So the top, these roads are on top, that back, this white is actually going to be the local eventually, and then that black right here is going to be the water. So I'm going to hide the major road for a second, and I'm going to do the same thing for the water. I'm going to remove all the white. Since the water doesn't have to, you know, all connect, you might have to click a few times. As you can tell, I just selected the white there. I'm going to press Shift to add more, and I'm just going to zoom in and click a few. I'm going to try to get everything that I see, but you don't need every single dot. But you never know where a local road might be a part of in there. So I try to get at least as much as I can see. And once you delete that, you can see how awesome it's starting to look because you get the local roads popping through. So now what we have is you pretty much have your major roads, your local roads, and your water. And while it's just black and white, you're starting to see the shape that it's going to come through, which is awesome. The last thing that I want to talk about is how we're gonna it's going to be the local roads and the water real quick, because as you can tell, if you remove the frame, it goes all the way to the bottom and around. If that is connected to the edge and then we delete the edge, that fill is going to be everything negative. So one thing I do, and it didn't come up until like the second map, but now every time I do this, what I do is I go to frame, I just take the match point, I select, oh, you have to have the frame selected, sorry about that. Let's open up the frame, click the rectangle, have the frame selected, and now delete from the water and the local. So delete, and you might not see much, but once you hide the frame, you'll see that the local and water is now removed that area. The reason being is now all this is going to be connected where it needs to be connected. If it runs off to the edge and then we try to push this into Lightburn, A, it's going to run way too much, and then B, if the frame was there, it might cut that frame and then actually spew over into the negative. So kind of a pro tip on that, because you'll get frustrated the first couple times you experience that. I go back to the rectangle tool. I'm just going to make a border. That way when I go into Lightburn, it's going to have that 11x14 frame already, and I don't have to make sure it's all square. So the width is going to be 11 inches. Height is going to be 14 inches. Cool. And then I'm going to remove that and make sure that I can see the border. That's a pretty thick border. Let's just do that and then just push it around. The only thing with the border is I just don't want it to touch anything else. I want there to be some space. And now we're ready to send this over to Lightburn. What we're going to do is just only do one layer at a time. So right now we have the local roads. So we can go to File, Export, and export as PNG. As you can tell, I already have these already made, but let's just go Save. And I'm going to replace it just to show you. Boom, there it is. And then again, I'm going to unhide the local, and I'm going to do water now. Do the same thing. Export, quick export, and then I'm going to do water. Great, yeah, replace it. And then last but not least, I'm going to do major. But again, with the major, I want the frame as well. So now I'm going to do, you can unhide the small rectangle, it doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to go File, Export, Export as PNG. Now this is going to be major. Save, yes, I'm going to replace. Perfect. So now once you got all those layers, again, let's look at that layer, and that's pretty much identical with what we have here. Of course, there's text at the bottom, but other than that, it's pretty much identical. And then let me go out of that and do water and local. Now if you kind of look, that pure black is what's going to be cut out, right? And then the local roads is going to be what's engraved. That's why we had to do it separately, so that when we do the local roads, we can just have that a fill. And then when we do the water, we can trace it and then use that as a cut. All right. So this is another program. Let me just go new. As you can tell, I've already worked on this before. But another thing is Lightburn. If you don't use it and you have a laser cutter, just spend the $60, $70. It is awesome. It's definitely worth it. Again, not a paid sponsor. Just like the products. All right. And then I'm going to be importing. And again, this is the local major water. And as if you can tell, I'm just going to go properties, just show you. I just did this, August 24th at 12:02. So these are all the ones I just done. And let's just start with the major. I like to select red for this layer for the major. I just do it because I know it's going to be a cut, and I just, now doing so many of these, I just have the colors I use for each layer. All right, let's just show that layer. And now I can delete the image portion, and now I have this. And as you can tell, again, looks pretty similar, right? So I'm not going to be going over settings and all that stuff with the laser. If you've had your laser, you know what settings you're going to use for what wood and what thickness. So if you don't, kind of look over different videos on how you would set up your laser and all that stuff. But essentially for my laser, I have a diode. I think it's an Atom Stack X1 Pro or something like that. But for me, my setting that I've been using is 885 with 3 pass cut. I do this to make sure 100% it goes through, it's clean cuts, and no extra burning. So that's what the settings I use. And I just push that in the middle. The next one is going to be import. I'm going to just do water. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark this as blue because I just think water blue, right? Pretty simple. Trace image. How can you trace the image? Delete the image portion of it. But again, all I want is the outer one. So I'm going to ungroup, remove that. And I'm going to highlight and regroup them. And I'm going to push this right over top. And if you're not, I just zoom in, grab that, and push it to the perfect corner. I go to the opposite corner, perfect, perfect. Everything looks good. So it's all aligned. And as you can tell, it looks pretty much all aligned as well. So that's gorgeous. Now the last thing is going to be the local roads. So the same thing. I'm going to trace the image, right click, trace, okay. Beautiful. And then now for this one, I'm going to mark it as black. Again, I just use black because that's what I've been using. And then it is a fill. So as you can tell, let's ungroup. I don't even need either one because I know it's going to work in here. That cut is going to be on the same cut as the water, and we already have that border for the water, so we don't need it a second time. But I use it. I use this line to make it a different color. So that's because I need it. I need that one for the back one. So the first thing I do is ungroup. I'm actually gonna delete that. And as you can tell, everything went opposite. Kind of similar to the reason why in the Photoshop I had to remove those borders. Is because if you didn't do that, the negative would just drain through and it wouldn't work. And then again for this back, We're going to change it to orange and make that a line. And I'm just going to show that. So that way I have the line, and I can use that line for the back border. I'm going to highlight that and group it all together. And now again, I'm going to push this over, make it all on top of each other. Push that there, make sure it's all in the same corners. Awesome. And the last thing that I do is highlight all. And as you can tell, the width and heights are slightly off. I just go in and just make it perfect, just to make me happy. And then I do one more time. I just double check, make sure all the corners are looking good. Nothing is crazy. But now we have pretty much what we need to move forward. So again, let's just unhide each one just to show. So again, we have the top layer. So then you would just go into your laser cutter, run this, and if you have a larger laser cutter and you can do all three at the same time, then even better for you. Then just separate the layers now and then just cut them out all at the same time. So that's the top layer. But if you don't, because you're like me and you don't have a one that large, this is the way I would do it. I would run this first. I would then open that and open that. And so then you have your fill and your line. Again, I would run the fill before I run the line. And then you run that, and then that would give you this. And then the last layer is this orange layer. And then you would just take a sheet and then just make a rectangle out of it and then stain it or cut it. So then you have all your stuff ready to go in this one file. And again, just change the settings wherever you deem fit. But these are the settings for my laser. And the last thing that I almost missed was to add text. So after all this, you can go in, click, and then add space needle. If I can spell. And then you can do, let's just do space needle. I typically just mark it as pink for text for some reason. Alright, and then you can change the size if you want, and the font if you wanted a different font. And then let's do text again. We'll do, let's just keep it all capital. Washington, actually, sorry, Seattle, Washington. Okay, and then we want this a little smaller. Make sure it fits, a little room. Beautiful. And then what you can do here is then align it center. Perfect. And then we're going to just take those two, click on the whole thing, and then we're going to, not that one, I always mess this one up, center as well. So then they're not just centered to itself, but centered to the whole thing, and beautiful. So then, yeah, when you run the top layer, you're going to want to run the text as well. So then you have the Space Needle in Seattle, Washington. And again, I like to run my fills anytime before I run my lines, just in case, you know, the lines shift it after items drop. I always run the fill first. So I push the fill on top, and as you can tell, we're all ready to go. So then you just save as, and start printing it up, cutting them out. And then again, you have all three layers. And now what I use is, I use wood glue. I use just standard wood glue for the middle layer and the back layer. Put them together, clamp them up, and then for actually the top layer, to the remaining two layers, there's a Gorilla Glue spray. Make sure it's not there's like a web kind of spray and just a clear spray. Make sure it's the clear spray. And then just spray the back, put it on top. I use clamps, and then I also put just heavy stuff on top to make sure, you know, the stuff in the middle gets clamped down or pushed down as well. Hold that in for a day, and then I put it into the frame. Again, if you're going to do some staining, some coating, I've done some really cool ones that use that as well. Let me see if I can pull up. Let's go to web page. Let's go to Facebook. See if I can. Let me push this over here just for me for a second. All right, and then this is my Facebook page. I've done a few, but as you can tell, I've done some different stainings. So I've done one where the different stain for the major roads and the middle roads. I really like that look. And then last but not least, you can see here, this is just laser etched, but I also take it a step further and I make it a lifted up, a raised letter. I actually use my 3D printer for these letters. The reason being is when I laser etch out, sometimes it's too small and it kind of crumbles a little bit. So the laser just work, or the 3D printer just works so much better for the letters. So that's what I use. And then just to show a couple other maps, this is the map that I had. I sold one, and then he wanted 5 more after I gave it to him because he loved him so much. And this is awesome. It was his barn and his grain silo. Great guy. And then, oh yeah, this is actually the initial one where I sold the farm and actually won on their house. And again, you know, I've done quite a bit of other stuff, but I've also done other custom work where it's one location where it was in Huntsville, and another location I think it was in Florida for their engagement in their house. So some really cool different ideas that you can do with this as well. All right, that's about it on how you would create one of these pieces of art. You can always try and adjust different things, but this is the plain and simple way on how you would make these cityscape maps. And if you look on Etsy, they're selling for $200, $300 just for something that I just showed you on how to do. You know, for example, let's go to that Chicago. Yeah, I want to redirect. I mean, for that 11 by 14, it's $250. So, I mean, you can make a pretty good living making these. Again, I sell them for $100, but I do it because the shipping I don't have to deal with shipping because I only do local. So if you guys want the Space Needle map, just let me know and I can get that all taken care of and sent away. Just hit a like and subscribe and put in a comment of other items that you see on Etsy that is laser engraved and how you would recreate that. I'll be looking at those comments and trying to make videos on how you would recreate some of these works of art. Thank you so much and have a great day.